Hi, welcome to my OnlyFans page. What, this isn't my OnlyFans? Sorry.
I was sitting out there in the shed one evening, not doing too much of nothing, just kind of staring at the wall and...
Sorry, I was just playing around. Hey, welcome back to the Mr. Fix-It channel. Working on the GS Suzuki. Gonna try to get this exhaust finished. Stay tuned. Okay, so I need to connect this to this because I don't think Wi-Fi exhaust works very good. So I'm running into a bit of an issue here. So if you look, this pipe is pointing right at the center stand. I'm probably going to delete this center stand, but they are very handy. There's a chance I may keep this on here, is what I'm saying. So in order for me to go around this, I'm gonna have to do a couple 90-degree bends to go like this, right? So I've got this U-bent piece right here and this straight piece right here. So my plan is I'm gonna shorten this tube here. I'm gonna cut this into pieces and paste it all back together in here. I'm gonna cut this right here and then flip this part around so it makes an S, and I think that'll get me pretty close to hooking up to the it's not a muffler, it's a tip, the exhaust tip. So I don't know. So I got to sitting there and staring at this bike, and I realized that if I'm gonna have to remove the exhaust every time I want to change the filter, I should probably make this thing as easy to remove as possible. So I think I just made my life complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I got this, whereas this slips into this nicely, and I think I want to make the midsection or whatever come off of the header. I don't think I want to weld the midsection, the mid pipe onto this. I want to make this come apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off right there, and I'm going to weld this onto there so that this pipe can slip into that pipe and I can clamp it here. Again, I'm going to cut this pipe right here, swing this half around and make an S out of it. I don't know. We'll just see what happens. man, I'm sweating. It's like 96 degrees with like 60% humidity today. But I'm anxious to hear this exhaust. So let me plug everything back in, hook up the carbs, add some gas, and see if we can fire it up. I'm anxious. Let's see what it sounds like. So I went to fire the bike up and it only wants to run on 2 cylinders. This bike just does not want to let me ride, does it? I tell you what, man, this bike just keeps on giving. So just doing some troubleshooting here. Determine it's the CDI box. So I'm gonna show you how to troubleshoot this ignition. It's pretty simple, not much to it. So let's get into that. Alright, so on this ignition system you have 2 coils. Each coil has 2 leads. So one coil fires cylinder number 1 and cylinder number 4. The other coil fires cylinder number 2 and cylinder number 3. So looks like this is the coil for 1 and 4. And this is the coil for 2 and 3. Now if I feel up here, the coil for 1 and 4, the coil for 1 and 4 is getting a little warm. The 2 and 3 coil is cold. I've had the ignition on for a few minutes here, just trying to diagnose. And I've determined that the 2 and 3 coil is firing, but the 1 and 4 coil is not. So I got the timing cover off. We got the 2 pickup coils. This is for 2-3, this is for 1-4, and if you take something metal like this bit driver here and you wave it past that pickup coil, it will fire the spark plugs. Now both these coils are kind of wired together, they're like daisy chains, so the power comes in to one coil, then the wire jumps from that coil to that coil and then back out. These are the 2 wires that go in and back out of the pickup coils, the green and the blue. Right here it has this 2-wire connector. Now what you can do is you can take this piece of metal and you can trigger the CDI box to fire a coil. So if you look, I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to wave it. I'm just going to wave it past. So I'm just going to wave this past here. And you can see that spark plug's firing. This is for the 2 and 3 coil. If I wave it past the other one, you can see it's still just the same spark plug firing. No matter which one I wave it past, it's only this plug that's firing. So I was running on 2, so that tells me that that coil is good. Where's the problem? Is it a coil? Is it a spark plug? Is it the wiring? Or is it the CDI box? Now this ignition system only has 6 wires in it. You got these 2 for the 2 pulse coils. You have a power from the battery, well from the fuse, you know what I mean. And then there's a ground, and then you got the 2 trigger wires that come up to the coil. Now the orange wire with the white stripe, that's going to be your battery positive. The other odd color wires are going to be your spark signal or crank signal, whichever you prefer. So we got a white wire and a black wire with a yellow stripe. So this is the CDI box here. This is a transistorized capacitor discharge. CDI stands for capacitive discharge ignition. So it takes the pulse signal. So as the engine turns, it waves that little metal flag or tab past this coil of wire. And with the magnet in here, This will induce an electric current in this coil, and it will send it back through this wires into the CDI box. That electronic signal then turns on or turns off transistors inside the CDI box. And depending on if it's turned on or turned off, depends on which coil will fire. Okay, I got my meter set to DC voltage. I've got my positive lead in the orange-white wire of the number 1 4-cylinder coil. I'm going to take my negative lead and I'm going to touch it to ground, and we'll see if we get voltage. Okay, so we got 10.16 volts. Now I'm going to take the lead out of that one and I'm going to put it in the positive lead for the other coil, the other orange and white. 10.17. So that's a low number. My battery's probably a little discharged from troubleshooting, but we can tell that the number is the same for both of these coils, and one's firing. So okay, now I got both my meter leads in both wires of the 1-4 coil, so the white wire and the orange white wire. Still got my meter set to voltage. I'm going to take my bit driver here and I'm going to trigger pulse coils and look for a switching action in the voltage. So I'm just going to wave this past here and check for a trigger here. So waving it past the 2-3 coil pulsar turns the transistor on. I'm going to wave it past the 1-4. It turns the transistor off. Just going around like this. If you just go like this, you don't get the switching action. You just go on one. So you have to go around one and hit the other one like this. You can't just go like this. And it's this switching on and off is what causes spark for the two different coils. So you have a firing event that happens in both leads. So this coil has 2 leads, so each lead is sparking at the same time. This is what you call a waste spark system. So when the cylinder number 1 is on the compression stroke, this cylinder 4 is on the exhaust stroke. So this will actually spark during the exhaust stroke when it fires the compression stroke of cylinder number 1, and the same thing for cylinder 2 and 3. So the 2 different coils, 2 different spark events for 4 cylinders. So you always have a spark happening on the exhaust stroke and on the compression stroke. Alright, now I got my meter leads in the other coil for 2-3 cylinders. Still got it set on voltage. Now I'm going to trigger the pulsars, and we're going to look for the switching action. On, off, on, off. So the first thing I notice here is that this transistor is turning completely off. There is no voltage there, 0. On the other coil I was having a little bit of voltage, so take note for that. Okay, so how do you know for sure that it's the CDI box and not an ignition coil? Well, what I'm going to do, unfortunately on this bike, they have the connectors like back, opposite of each other, so I can't just plug one into the other. Some of the other bikes out there, they're the same way. You can just plug one into the other. So I'm going to have to get some jumper wires, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the trigger and power from the 2-3 coil that I know is working, and I'm going to try to power the 1-4 coil with it. So bear with me. Alright, here's the connector for the 2-3 coil right here. I got the jumper leads running around to the 1-4 coil here. This is our 2-3 coil, this is our 1-2 coil. I'm going to trigger it, watch what happens. So the coil is good. It will spark. So that leaves the CDI box. The repair manual will tell you to unplug this connector, and on the CDI box side of this connector you will take the Suzuki meter which is I think some kind of peak meter or something. It's not like one of these. This won't work, so you can't do it with this meter. But if you have that meter, you would connect the positive lead to green and the negative to blue, and then you would, when you connected them, you should spark the number 1-4 coil, and when you disconnect from here, it should spark the 2-3 coil, and that's how you test the CDI box according to the book. But I'm sure you're like me, and you probably only have a multimeter, and you don't have the special Suzuki meter to do that test with. So this is how I come to the conclusion that the CDI box is bad. Now this brings up a question. Why? Why did it go bad? All I did was pull the motor off and drill out exhaust bolts and then put the motor back in. I don't know. These things typically don't just go bad like that. I think I might have left the ignition on or something. Maybe that did it. I don't know. But the problem is I wanted to start this thing up for you guys and for myself because I want to hear what this exhaust sounds like. So if I stop this video here, it's going to be another week because I got to order a CDI box for this thing, and the CDI boxes for this are 40 years old, and of course they want $100 or more for one that's used, untested. So I think what I'm going to do, I've got a plan. I'm going to try this. I am going to replace the CDI, but I don't think I'm going to go factory. I think I'm going to go with a Dynatech or something like what I put in my 1000 Suzuki. But for now, let's see if I can just get this bike to run. Check it out. So this is my 79 Suzuki 1000, and it had points in it, and I upgraded this to the electronic ignition. And what I got was this, the Dynatech, and it works great. I put that thing in that bike, I set the static timing, and I have not went back in there since, and I've put, I don't know, 20,000 miles on it so far. It's worked flawlessly. But that being said, I have the points ignition that I took out of that bike here. So let me see if I can hook this up on that 850 and go to points and maybe at least hear it run today. That would be cool. Okay, so I'm going to remove this pulse coil plate. It's got 3 screws in it. I also need to remove the pulsar tab there, so it's a 12 millimeter. We'll take this off. Okay, now I'm just going to take the advancer. Normally we would call this a cam. I guess you could still call it a cam. I'm just going to pull that out. Take that off. Stuff in there. I have the cam for the points, and we can just slip this right in here. Kind of got to pull the weights back and tuck this thing in. So now we can take our points ignition plate and we can slide that on there. Careful with this little felt right there, you don't want to tear it off. This thing is slotted so you can adjust the timing. I'm just going to set it somewhere in the middle here. And now these 2 wires become your signal that turns on and off the coils that create your spark. So all I got to do is hook these to those coils on the trigger side and 12 volts to the positive side, and we should have spark on both coils. Reinstall the bolt and this washer. Alright, so this jumble of wires here is, so I got the black and white wire from the timing plate going into the trigger side of the 2 coils. So that's my white wire, that's my black wire. I got these 2 green wires coming from the positive side of the 2 coils from the harness, connected into this connector. Got the ignition on, and now all I gotta do is open up the ignition points. There's fire on that one, I'm going to rotate this around, close the other points, and now it should fire on the other. It's kind of hard to see, but you can hear it. So the coils are firing. Both the coils are good. This should make it run. I'm going to have to do some stuff to make this more permanent, or at least so I can get a test in. So let me do that and I'll be right back. Ah, heck it, let's just try it like that. Finally. Yeah, I think it sounds pretty good considering the fact that I have not tuned the carbs, I haven't synced the carbs, I didn't even set the timing with the light or anything. So I guess I need to get a new ignition system for this. Man, that sucks. It was running just fine. I pulled the motor off, put it back on, now it won't run. Go figure. Yeah, it's pretty loud. It kind of tickles my earballs a little bit. So with all that screwing around with the ignition system, I'm out of time for this video today. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Don't be afraid to fix it. Thanks for watching.